Hi, I'm Meghan, Processing Manager here at Special Collections Research Center, and you guessed it, I'm back with another 6 degrees or less of Zelda Fichandler. But this time, we're going to do stuff a little bit different. Instead of connecting Zelda to an individual or a title, I want to show how Zelda herself connects the old and the new with the production she championed at Arena Stage. While Henrik Ibsen and Arthur Miller may be household names now and staples of every high school English curriculum, back when Arena Stage opened in the 1950s, that wasn't necessarily the case. Arthur Miller was still actively writing plays, and Henrik Ibsen, a Norwegian playwright, hadn't really made a splash in the United States yet. But Zelda saw something in both of them, and they became staples not just as her time as artistic director of Arena Stage, but plays that she came back to time and again as a director of productions themselves. So let's start with Arthur Miller. Obviously, one of his best-known plays is The Crucible. And it was a play that Zelda returned to multiple times as a director at Arena Stage. One of the earliest productions at Arena Stage was The Crucible. And one of Zelda's earliest productions was a 1960s production of The Crucible that starred both Robert Prosky and a very young Jane Alexander. She revisited the show again in the 1980s, and that production went on to tour internationally at the Israel Festival. The Crucible is a good one to pick for this because not only is it one of his best-known plays, but Zelda seemed really interested in finding ways to revisit this show. So these photographs that are pulled here, these are from a very early production of The Crucible that Zelda directed in the late 1960s. It starred some of the staples of early Arena Stage, including Robert Prosky in the most fabulous cape I've ever seen, and also a very young Jane Alexander in a very early production for her. What's interesting, though, is decades later, Zelda still felt that she had more to do with The Crucible. So in 1987, she revisited the show and redirected it for a new production with a new cast, where she did additional research on Salem, witch trials, and Arthur Miller's influences on the play. So this program is from the 1987 production of The Crucible, and as you can see, Zelda was still revisiting this play decades after it had originally premiered at Arena Stage. This production, though, what I found most interesting is if you look at the About the Play section of this, which was written by Zelda, one of the interesting things about it is you can see that she worked a lot of research about the history of Salem, the history of the witch trials, and the history of the culture of that time period into this About the Play, which shows that she was still actively researching information about this play, even though she'd already directed it once. So transitioning over to Henrik Ibsen, and really arguably his best-known play, which is A Dollhouse, or A Doll's House, depending on who you talk to. What's interesting about this show is that in the times that she was doing Henrik Ibsen, there wasn't a standard translation, because remember, Henrik Ibsen's a Norwegian playwright. There wasn't a standard translation that you could just go to and that's the production everybody did. One of the things that Zelda was really interested in was finding unique and more accurate translations of non-English works, and that includes Henrik Ibsen. And one of the exciting things in this collection is this early script that includes a new translation of Henrik Ibsen's A Dollhouse that has edits from Zelda, not just in blocking and staging, but also in how she wanted the play to come across in the translation. So she made edits in these translations, not just interpreting them on the stage as a director. So while The Crucible may be Miller's most well-known play, and one that Zelda, as we mentioned, revisited multiple times, Arthur Miller as a playwright is somebody that Zelda returned to multiple times for multiple different titles. You have the common ones like Death of a Salesman, but she also visited plays by Miller that aren't necessarily as produced, including After the Fall, which is a 1964 play. It's considered one of Miller's most personal plays, dealing, most argue, with his feelings of his divorce from Marilyn Monroe. Disclaimer. Per this letter from Arthur Miller, dated May 11, 1980, quote, "I guess it is too much to ask that people take out 10 fingers and count, and discover that I wrote the piece well before Marilyn died, and when I fully expected she would one day see it," unquote.
Sure, Jan.
That production, directed by Zelda, premiered at Arena Stage in 1980, and is interestingly a production where we see Zelda bringing Arthur Miller, a very American playwright, to an international audience. That production of After the Fall had productions that toured at the Hong Kong Arts Festival and the Israel Festival in Jerusalem. So back to Henrik Ibsen. Just like Arthur Miller, Zelda did revisit a lot of his shows, and two of them are some of his lesser-known shows, at least in the United States. One is An Enemy of the People, and one is The Wild Duck. Both productions were done at Arena Stage, Zelda directed An Enemy of the People, but she did not direct The Wild Duck, but it was a really, really well-received production, which showed that she really was pushing to get these international playwrights to a United States audience. So that's how Zelda connects 19th century Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen to 20th century American playwright Arthur Miller. There is tons more in the Zelda Fichandler papers about both of these playwrights and their productions. This was just a sampling. So I thought, let's conclude this video with some words from Arthur Miller himself, as I believe he would want us to. This letter was written on July 14th, 1987, and it starts, "Dear Zelda, the days went by, and I kept saying tomorrow, and everything got in the way, and I feel guilty, but that doesn't do much good. It was just too much of a trip. In fact, they were after me to go up to see the play in Williamstown, a 2.5-hour drive, and I didn't make that either. I've just finished an enormous book, and I guess I'm more tired than I thought, because the idea of getting up and going anywhere is kinda awful. Instead, I just built a new dock on my pond. I do manage to get down there. So it wasn't for not trying. I did try, but it was too much. I hope you'll understand, or try to. All best, Arthur." So as you can see, Zelda is making significant progress for getting fully processed. We have 25 fully completed boxes, and everything with a pink sticky note is already processed and ready to go in an inventory. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have a person or a show that you want to see if they have a 6-degree connection to Zelda Fichandler, leave us a note in the comments. But if not, I'll see you next time for another 6 degrees or less of Zelda Fichandler.